Turborepo is a task runner for Monorepos. It is not a dependency management tool, so Turborepo doesn't know anything about installing dependencies, upgrading packages, uninstalling dependencies, any of that. What Turborepo does is that it will see the NPM scripts that you're using across all your packages, and let's say that it will optimize them. Turborepo also has local and remote caching. That means that, for instance, if you run the build script once and you rerun it with the same contents, you will get the same output immediately because that output will be cached. One of the greatest things about Turborepo is that it's easy to use. As I said, Turborepo is a thin layer on top of your Monorepo. And what is even cooler is that Turborepo is even easier to delete than to install. Turborepo doesn't get in the way as it is only a task runner, and you don't have to modify your application code or anything to make it work. Turborepo is smart enough to understand what task should be executed first and what task should follow. And with Turborepo, you have the flexibility to just run, for instance, let's say the build command in only one of your packages with a nice filter API that looks a lot like the NPM API. For this course, I recommend you to do the introduction to Monorepos with NPM Workspaces first, so you can get the most out of it. The code for the NPM Workspaces course can be found in Alejandro Nanes/NPM Workspaces. You can clone this repository and start from there if you want, or you can grab the final version that is here in Turborepo Egghead course. Let's begin by installing Turborepo in the root of the project as a dev dependency. Now that Turborepo is installed, we can create a turbo.json file. So all the configuration that we want to add to Turborepo is going to be in this file. So let's begin by adding the schema key. And the value for that key is going to be this JSON schema URL. So let's check this out. So as you can see, this is a JSON schema file and it has some definitions. So for instance, it has definitions for pipeline, remote cache, and schema. So let's open remote cache. And as you can see here, we have this signature. It defaults to false. It has a really nice description and is of type Boolean. And what that gives us is autocomplete here. So for instance, if I type double quotes, then control space, let's open remote cache, then let's do that again, signature, and it says false. So basically the JSON schema that we are using here is like a blueprint for all the things inside turbo.json. So now let's delete this remote cache because we don't need it. All right, so the last thing that we are going to do is that we are going to add the .turbo folder, and this .turbo folder is going to be used for Turborepo to add logs and to save certain outputs. We also need to ignore the outputs that are produced in our applications and our libraries. So for instance, because we are using vid.js and we are using tsap, we are ignoring the dist folder, and we have another application that is a Next.js application, so we are ignoring the .next folder. All right, to recap, we added Turbo as a dev dependency in the root package JSON file. We also created a turbo.json file, which is the one that is going to hold all the information about Turbo in our project. And we also ignored the .turbo folder in gitignore, in the root gitignore, and we also make sure that we are ignoring the dist folder and the .next folder. Those are where Next.js outputs its artifacts, and same goes for dist. The Monorepo currently has three packages: the block package, the dashboard package, and the utils package. The block package is an Next.js application, the dashboard package is a Vite.js application, and the utils package is a TypeScript library that is built with TSAP. And block and dashboard consume the compiled version of utils. The workflow is this: utils builds TypeScript to JavaScript, then dashboard and block consume the JavaScript version of utils. If utils for some reason fails to build, then dashboard and block should fail to build as well, and the same is true for the tests. If utils fails to build, then dashboard and block should fail as well. Alright, so let's begin by adding the dev pipeline. So let's add dev, and we're going to tell Turborepo to not cache it. Now we're going to add the build pipeline. Here we want Turborepo to cache it, so we don't have to specify that explicitly. And we add this depends on array. And as we just said, the build command depends on other build commands. And to specify that, we need to add the caret before the build command. And this means that I want to run the build command in the dependencies first and then in the package itself. For instance, if we are running build in the dashboard package, we want to run build in its dependencies, that means in the utils package, and once that is done, we want to run build in the dashboard package. We also want to specify what are the outputs. Because we have a Next.js application and we have a Vite application and also we have TSAP, we know that the output for the Next.js application is the .next folder, and the output for the Vite.js application and TSAP is the dist folder. And the test pipeline is similar to the build one, so here we want to make sure that the build command executes successfully in the dependencies, and once that is okay, then we can run test. And the last pipeline that we want to build is the type check pipeline. This pipeline doesn't have any dependencies or anything in other packages of the Monorepo, so it can run basically by itself. So we don't specify anything else inside the configuration object. Okay, and the way that Turborepo pipelines work is this. If we have a dev pipeline, then Turborepo is going to look for the dev script in each one of the projects. In this case, dashboard and blog. We also have the utils package, but I didn't put it here because of space constraints. When Turborepo finds the build pipeline, it looks for build in dashboard and blog. And next, let's say that we have type check here. So Turborepo is going to look for type check in the dashboard scripts or in the blog scripts. And because it doesn't find it, it will just ignore it. So the idea behind pipelines is that we have to map the pipeline name one-to-one to the scripts that we have in each one of our packages. That is why it's important for us to be consistent. We should call the dev script dev in dashboard, in blog, and in every single package of the Monorepo. Same goes for build, type check, etc., etc. Now let's replace this with turbo run dev, and this check command is composed by test and type check. So let's change this to turbo run test and type check. And last but not least, let's remove concurrently because we don't need that anymore. Okay, and now to prove that everything's working, let's run npm run dev. And if we scroll a bit up, we'll see that we are running dev in the blog project, dev in the utils project, and dev in the dashboard project all at the same time without using any external tool but Turborepo. Now let's run check. Okay, and if we scroll all the way to the top, we see that we are running dashboard type check, blog type check. We started to run utils test, then utils build, utils type check. We keep executing utils test. Let's scroll down. We're running the blog type check, the dashboard type check, utils type check. Then we start running utils build. And only once utils build finish, Turborepo start running dashboard test and blog test. And this is because how dependencies work and how Turborepo handles them. To recap, we explained how the dependencies work in our project. So blog and dashboard depend on the utils package. We know that utils has to be built from TypeScript to JavaScript, so then dashboard and blog can use it. And we also saw how the pipelines work. Turborepo matches one-to-one from the pipeline name to the NPM script inside each one of the packages. For instance, it maps dev to dev, dev to dev, and build to build, build to build. In this case, we have type check just for this example. And because dashboard and blog doesn't know anything about type check, Turborepo just ignores it. And here we replaced concurrently with Turbo, and we uninstalled concurrently from the project. The first time you run a command in Turborepo, it will cache it, unless you tell it not to. Alright, so this finished, and it took around 4 seconds. Now let's clear this and let's run it again. And it only took 55 milliseconds because everything is cached now. Alright, so Turborepo cache lives inside node modules, then .cache, then turbo, and here you will find all the artifacts built by Turborepo. Alright, so let's open this 466, and this belongs to the utils package after being built. This one belongs to the next application, and this one belongs to the vid.js application. Now let's run npx turbo run build again. Let's scroll all the way to the top, and we see that utils build has this cache 466, and here you have it, 466 belongs to the utils package. So what you can do to delete the cache from your local machine, you can do rm rf and then delete the turbo folder inside the cache inside node modules. To recap, whenever you run a Turborepo pipeline, it is going to store the cache inside the node modules folder and then inside the cache folder and then inside the turbo folder. And to delete the local cache, you can just remove the turbo folder inside .cache inside node modules. And if we run npx turbo run build again, we'll see that it starts creating it from scratch. And if we run this again, we'll see that Turborepo is not running those commands, and instead it is using the cache version.